How's it going, and welcome to No Fun Allowed's guide series on Candlekeep Mysteries, a 5th edition module. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the book Zikran's Zephyrean Tome. If you do not wish to be spoiled, then do not watch this. But DMs that want that added insight, go ahead and stick around because we have a lot to go over. Our adventure begins in Candlekeep as always, and this book is unique because this thing has not been opened. And for some strange reason, this book that can never be opened, they just kind of just put it on the side and forget about it. Well, wouldn't you know, it's going to open up for your players. And why is that? Because this book only opens for anybody that intends on leaving Candlekeep at some point, which of course your players would presumably have. If you don't have that, then just go ahead and just have it do it anyway, because we've got an adventure to run here. Once your players crack this thing open and start to read more and more, eventually smoke will billow out, and there revealed will be Gazri-Azam, the Jinn. Gazri-Azam will go ahead and tell the players his plight, that he was summoned by an evil man named Zikran, and he plans on doing terrible things, and unfortunately, Gazri-Azam was put into this book for not following orders. Gazri-Azam will tell the players about his plight, about how Zikran summoned him forth and forced him to do weird things, and eventually Gazri-Azam was placed into this book. He will reveal that the only way to be removed from this book is by either killing or subduing Zikran. Of course, nothing in this world is free, so Gazri-Azam will offer up the party and say, hey, I'll cast a wish spell for you all if you help me get free. So normally with most books, you're not allowed to just take them out of Candlekeep willy-nilly. But if an Avowed shows up and sees Gazri-Azam is bound to this thing, the Avowed will say, hey, you can take the book, just make sure you bring the book back to us once the Jinn is freed. Now, during the course of this adventure, you can have Gazri-Azam talk to the party as much as you want, and he should be a fun side-on gag and addition to the party, as you kind of want that relationship to build up. If you have your players build this relationship up, then they'll feel much more rewarded once they free this guy. Mind you, Gazri-Azam is not a Jinn in stats. He can really only talk to the party. He can't cast any spells or do anything else until he is freed. So with this book in hand and a Gazri-Azam by your players' sides, your players are going to strike out. And the only lead you have right from the get-go is Gazri-Azam is going to mention that there was a laboratory down by the sea. After an either eventful or completely uneventful adventure, your players will arrive at the flooded cave. In Area 1 of Zikran's laboratory, we have the Coral Spire. When your players arrive here, they can begin to look around, and with a DC 14 perception check, your players will be able to see some claw marks. With a DC 12 nature check, they will determine that these were made by a young dragon. So if your players are looking around, they may see this and think, one, okay, they might be going up against the dragon, that's bad news. Or two, they might be thinking, oh, is Gazri-Azam setting us into a trap? What's going on here? I would always recommend that Gazri-Azam speak truthfully, speak openly, and say, hey, I don't have a clue, this was a while ago, years ago, maybe someone inhabited this place, but this is the only clue we have, so let's go check it out. In Area 2, the Flooded Cave, when your players arrive in here, they'll be able to spot several bodies. These corpses are of a duo that sadly drowned in their sleep, and are now ghosts that are willing to attack anyone that comes nearby. If your party members interact with the corpses, then the ghosts are going to spring up, combat's going to ensue, and this could prove dangerous because, of course, ghosts can make people age, and they can inhabit people, and, you know, that's just a lot of resources wasted, a lot of time wasted. Hopefully your players don't go poking dead bodies. But if your players feel like putting the dead to rest, your players can knock out the ghost, take the bodies, and bury them somewhere else. A search of the corpses will net 2 potions of healing, as well as 37 gold. Pretty cool. And because this is D&D, you have a secret door there. Your players can make a DC 15 perception check, and that'll lead them straight to the dragon's lair, but we'll be getting to that in a moment. In Area 3, we have the title chamber. Here, if your players missed it before, they will definitely see the claw marks located in here. That lead further in. In Area 4, we have Zikran's quarters. Located in here are a whole bunch of navigational charts and a whole bunch of nautical themed things. Ashgarlith, the dragon that now resides in here, collected these treasures and placed them in here. They're perfectly worthless, but of course they have a meaning to the dragon. In Area 5, the laboratory and lair, your players will undoubtedly meet with Ashgarlith, the dragon, whether they come from the secret door or from the regular doors. Ashgarlith, being a bronze dragon, is good, but is also prideful. You can't just come in here and start taking things willy-nilly. There might be a combat that ensues. In order for your players to get the clues necessary, they're gonna have to either combat the dragon or converse with the dragon. Your players can appeal to the dragon's good nature, they could talk nautical things, they could bribe the dragon, and that'll be enough. But if your players don't put in any effort, then for sure combat is going to ensue, and this is in fact the dragon's lair, so this is going to be a pretty rough fight. If a fight does go down with the dragon is going to fight and fight until it gets to 15 HP, at which point it is going to try and bargain with the party. If these negotiations don't work, the dragon is going to fight to the death, refusing to swallow its own pride. Once your players have conversed or fought with the dragon and have room to investigate, that is when they can make a DC 15 investigation check. Zikran will help in any search necessary. Of course, this is a fail state, so I would just say don't even bother having this check, because if there is no success here, then the quest basically just ends. Your players can learn a good chunk of information here about where Zikran is heading to. Your players learn that Zikran was headed to the Cloud Peaks, and also they find a diagram, but this diagram is pretty hard to figure out. It's going to require a DC 25 Arcana check, and if they succeed, they will discover that this thing is a cannon. With that information in hand, your players should ready themselves for the monstrous climb up the Cloud Peaks. Now, during a one-shot, you usually just hand-wave some things. If this is a full-blown campaign, then for sure you have to map this place out. But for a one-shot, you just go ahead and say, oh, it's over here and over there. Easy peasy. Emboldened by the pursuit of freeing their friend Zikran and getting that wish, your players climb up the Cloud Peaks. And it's here where we get a fun little journey here. Your players are actually going up against the elements, as they're going up against extreme cold, strong wind, and high altitude. As a reminder for these effects, extreme cold is incredibly dangerous. If your players do not have cold weather gear or are not resistant to the cold, then at the end of every hour they have to make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw or gain 1 level of exhaustion. Of course, DC 10 doesn't sound like nothing, but if you are traveling for days and days, you are going to fail and fail and fail, and all you need to do is fail 6 times and you're dead. A strong wind gives you disadvantage on all ranged weapon attacks, which for those poor bow people, that's gonna suck. And high altitude is a thing, but for the purposes of this, it already factors that in, so you don't have to worry about that. This ascent is going to take 3 days. On day number 1, nothing exciting is gonna happen. Your players are just gonna be climbing, climbing, and climbing. On day number 2, that is when danger is striking, as your players will be assailed by 1d4 plus 3 kobolds. Here's the thing. The kobolds are more than likely not going to be able to do anything major at all whatsoever, because they are just kobolds. But the kobolds aren't aiming to kill the characters outright. What they are doing is trying to damage their cold weather gear. Whenever one of these kobolds would deal 5 or more damage to a character in a single attack, it can instead damage the character's clothing, rendering it ineffective as cold weather gear. So yes, that's a big deal, you don't take any damage, but guess what, if you're out of cold weather gear, then you're going to start suffering from the extreme cold. In addition to this, on that same day, your players will also deal with an abominable yeti at night. Scary stuff. So of course, we're not given a map for the ascent and all these combats here. I would strongly recommend going to the Discord and to the Reddits looking for maps if you aren't going to make them yourself, but I would imagine that the trail would be anywhere between 10 to 15 foot wide at any given time. And finally, on day 3, your party is assailed yet again by 1d4 plus 3 winged kobolds, plus if any winged kobolds were not slain on the previous day. On the final leg of this journey, your players must make a DC 14 athletics check. If they fail by a little bit, they gain 1 level of exhaustion. However, if they fail by 5 or more, meaning 9, then they suffer 2 levels of exhaustion. So if you're running it rules as written, this is basically just going to force your players to take a long rest because they're not going to push in, right, if there is any exhaustion. But if you're running this as a one-shot and you say, hey, no long rest, then that's a huge deal. If your players are going into combat and they're level 2, level 3, maybe even more exhaustion, that's sort of sketchy. So really temper that to your own game. Your players finally crest the top of these peaks, and there they'll see the Cloud Giant's Keep. Once they make their way inside, they're not going to be subject to all of the wind, but they will be subject to the extreme cold. They'll be able to see that this keep used to be massive. It used to be many stories tall, and each story being massive, but they see that the place has crumbled. For keep features, we see that this place was of course built for giants, as the doorways are huge and the hallways are huge. However, there's barely any space to actually explore, so it's not going to really come up too much. It's more so your players are just going to be in awe because they're going to look so tiny compared to all these giants. And secondly, most important of all, is these cloud giant ghosts. Located inside of the keep, there are several cloud giant ghosts. The majority of these cloud giant skeletons will not attack the party unless they are attacked. However, some of them are listed as if they see the party, they will attack on sight. In Area 1, the front yard, your players will be able to just see this massive icy courtyard, and once again, just go ahead and show them the awe of how pathetically tiny they are compared to these giant civilizations. In Area 2, the entrance hall, this is where your players are going to see several cloud giant ghosts. But make sure to present them not as dangerous or as scary as they are just meandering about. And if the PCs are being loud, go ahead and say that the giants look in your direction but don't do anything. And that should prompt your players into making sure that they don't do anything too frisky. Located in the displays on the side here, your players can actually find out the history of these giants, which is pretty cool. I like this world building aspect that your players show up here and they start looking around and they can actually discover that this place used to be something. Your players will be able to see 2 doors that lead to other rooms, a staircase that leads upstairs, and a staircase that leads downstairs. In addition to that, your players can also find treasure. They can get that clan's history in those scrolls, and those will be worth a lot of money. In Area 3, the armory, your players can arrive here and see that this place is, of course, an armory. When your players look around, they'll see the ghost, but the ghost isn't hostile unless attacked, so as long as you don't have murder hobos, it's going to be fine. But your players can search around and they'll find a padlock. This will be a little hard to open up a DC 15 dexterity check with thieves tools, but if they open it up, it'll contain 2 potions of greater healing as well as a rusty iron sphere, an iron band of Bolaro. In Area 4, the mess hall, your players arrive here and they'll see that there's a fire raging, but that's not just any fire, that's a fire elemental, keeping this place a little warm. The 3 giant ghosts are in here playing 3 Dragon Ante. Anybody that makes a history check of DC 12 can discern that that is the game that they're playing. But the thing is that these giants are angry, and if your players are spotted, then the giants will stand up and attack. You should go ahead and present it that all the other giants around here look calm and peaceful, but when your players step in here, they should immediately note that these 3 giants look hella pissed. If your players fail a DC 17 stealth check to pass on through, then the giants will attack. And of course, 3 giants at once, that is actually pretty scary. And to make matters worse, if your players immediately start casting spells and doing whatever else, if any damage is done to that fire elemental, it is freed and thus it will go berserk, presumably attacking both the party and any ghost nearby. And just a quick look at the stat sheet here of this ghost, because it is a unique stat block. It is actually pretty hardcore. This thing hits like a truck. Plus 12, does 3d8 plus 8 damage. It has the wind howl ability, so it's sucking people in and doing some damage there. You know, these things are putting out some decent damage, and the fact that your players are going against 3 of them, that could be a little scary. After passing on through that area, your players can make their way to Area 5, the kitchen. Inside of here is another cloud giant ghost who is once again not attacking the party, but your players can search around and they can find not 1 but 2 alchemy jugs. Pretty awesome stuff. But the unique thing is that these are not regular alchemy jugs. One of them produces soy sauce and the other produces boiling hot tea. Pretty cool. Up on the 2nd floor, your players can go to the 2nd floor bedroom. It is in here where a giant ghost is writing out a letter forever and all of time. No combat to be had here unless your players search after it. Your players can look around and they can find boots of the Winterlands. They're getting a lot of swag just exploring around here. This is pretty sweet. In Area 7, we have Zikran's basement workshop. As your players make their way down the stairs to get down here, that is when they're going to be assailed by 2 water elementals and 6 ice methods. If Gazri Azam is present, he's going to pop out of the book and say, "Hey, you methods, back off," and 1d6 of the methods are going to disappear. You know, that's really cool. It helps build up this character. It makes sure that your players feel like he's helping out the party. You know, it's just a great time to be had. Once your players have dealt with this menace onto these stairs, they can make their way down, and there they'll see this amazing workshop. This is what the adventure's been leading up to. Your players see Zikran standing there menacingly. Your players can have a tense standoff with Zikran as he tells the party, "Hey, give me that book and I'll let you go." And if things don't work out, then combat's going to ensue. Because Zikran had prepared for the party, he has both mage armor, stone skin, and mind blank on him, so he's a little bit tougher than normal. And he's got both a water elemental and an air elemental by his side. He's also going to be bragging about the Cloud Giant Keep that he is restoring. He's just going to be this braggart show-it-all, and inevitably a combat is probably going to ensue because Zikran refused to let Ghazri-Azam free from the book, and your players probably want that wish. When the fight breaks out, that is when the awesome stuff's going to happen. That elemental cannon in the background is going to be on initiative count 20. Zikran will be holding a universal remote, and he will fire that cannon at one person who must make a DC 17 dexterity saving throw or take 7d6 points of cold damage on a failed save. Have as much on a success. This is a dynamic part of the combat here. Your players can either deal with the cannon or they can deal with the crystal, which is powering the cannon. Your players are going to want to beat up Zikran because he is a high-level spellcaster. They're going to be assailed by these elementals and this elemental cannon, and a fun time is going to ensue. So something important to note here is it specifically states for the elemental cannon that Zikran uses this thing on initiative count 20, which does mean that if he's being tied up, whether he's being restrained or he is stunned or incapacitated, whatever the case may be, that elemental cannon is not going off. You can obviously change that if your group is a bit stronger or if your group is weaker. You can definitely tie it to that because if you've got a smaller group, then this might be a pretty deadly encounter. Once Zikran is defeated, then the lock on Zikran's Zephyrean Tome shatters and Ghazri-Azam is freed. So the thing is if he's killed, then yes, this happens. But what happens if your players don't kill him? What if your players want to have negotiations go down? In which case, I would say if your players beat him down and non-lethally strike him down, and then they wake him up, and then they say, hey, free Ghazri-Azam, then yeah, just go ahead and let him do it because he wants to live, right? Your players may not have any qualms with this guy making this keep come back to life. Maybe your players just say, hey, give us the genie and we'll let you go. In which case, yeah, Zikran's gonna let Ghazri-Azam free. Your players may have other things in store as well. Maybe they plan on arresting Zikran. Maybe they plan on taking him back to Candlekeep. Whatever the case may be, your players should be rewarded for defeating this guy one way or another. Once freed, Ghazri-Azam will cast a wish on the character's behalf. Unless he has been treated horribly by the characters, he is unlikely to twist the wording of the party's wish. So that's what I like about this. This one shot or mini shot or whatever it is in your campaign, if your players have been good to Ghazri-Azam, then yeah, they're going to totally get a wish, which is awesome. But important to note, it's not the entire party getting one wish each. This is one wish for the whole party. That'd be a little nuts if every single person could get a wish this early in the game. Secondly, I like the part where if your party is being mean to Ghazri-Azam, then for sure he's gonna twist the wish. Screw these people, right? If they're just being jerks and just trying to use him, then yeah, screw that. Also, another thing I like about this is if your party was nice to Ghazri-Azam the whole time, then he's gonna say, hey, how about instead of a wish, what if instead I allowed you guys to have me tag along in your adventures? In which case he's going to have this book be a sensor of controlling air elementals, which will summon Ghazri-Azam. This is a great twist. This is a ton of fun because if you have this, then one, your players are going to have a great friend in someone who's going to presumably be their friend for some time. But two, also, they made a promise to Candlekeep to return this book, and now they don't want to return this book. So they're going to have to come up with something creative here to make sure that they don't get in any trouble. This adventure is cute. This adventure is short, sweet, and to the point. There's a bit of mystery going on in regards of what Zikran is actually doing. Your players kind of get the gist of it right from the get-go, especially if they succeed on all those checks in Zikran's laboratory. But it's a fun little romp of going to one location and then going to another, all the meanwhile making a friend along the way. I like the Cloud Giant Ghost as they are a fun stat block that I'm totally going to be using in other adventures. I like the fact that your players go up against an extremely high level caster, but it doesn't feel like an overpowered encounter because your players can deal with a caster usually easily. So your players having some elementals to go up against as well as a cannon shooting them down, you know, that's a ton of fun too. All in all, this adventure is just absolutely great. And when I ran it, it was fantastic. We had someone in the party wish for a big fish stick because they were a fisherman. So the party goes through all this trouble and then he just gets a fishing pole. And you know, that was just a fun time. This adventure, once again, works incredibly well for a one-shot, and it works well for putting it into any campaign. There's a lot of great things you can do with that. And if you are running a permanent campaign, you do have to consider the implications of that wish, because for a one-shot, who cares if they get whatever they want? But if it's a full-blown campaign, a wish at this lower level could prove rather ridiculous. So make sure to temper the expectations and make sure that whatever they get is not breaking the game. But hey, hopefully your players, if they decide to have Zikran as a friend, you don't have to worry about the wish. You know, that's a great thing too, is your players can instead walk away with a friend, and isn't it truly the friends that we make along the way? That's the important thing. So go ahead and tell me, are you going to have this as a one-shot or a full-blown campaign? Are your players going to be nice to the dragon, or do you think combat's going to ensue? Do your players kill Zikran, or do they beat him to a bloody pulp? Go ahead and tell me all those things, because I want to know. That's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you to my patrons. You guys are absolutely incredible, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.